Night Football, but Baylor is 4-0. I thought they would not have just enough to be able to do it. I was wrong. And in fact, 31-29, it got dicey at the end, my goodness, but they took care of their business. They took care of their business, and they're right in the thick of things in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, and I think if we really look at the Big 12 weekend, you can take out, one outlier in Texas and Texas Tech. I don't think there's going to be a lot of 70-35 games in the Big 12 this season, but I do think that if you look at the way that the weekend went, that's how it's going to go. Most weeks, most games are going to be like Baylor and Iowa State and Oklahoma and West Virginia and Oklahoma State and Kansas State. I think that's how games are going to go. That's what you're going to see in the Big 12 this year.
Well, it was a massive win. I mean, it's the first top 25 win in 6 years, which is a stat that I saw thrown around everywhere, and it's really hard to imagine that. But then you do recall that Matt Rule's final season when they went to the Sugar Bowl, the teams that they ended up playing were not top 25 ranked or fell out or whatever. So, it was cool to see them get that done. And I know it was a frustrating loss for Iowa State fans, but I think Baylor deserved to win that game. When you look at the fact that they jumped out to the early lead, and, I know a lot of Iowa State fans pointed to the special teams, obviously, was the killer, was the bugaboo. But Baylor had a lot of opportunities early in that game to extend the lead and to not make it so dicey there towards the end. Now, granted, things go differently for them. Things go differently for Iowa State. We're talking about all sorts of different outcomes. But bottom line is what we saw on Saturday, the actual proof. They got that early lead. That mattered. They held on to it, and they made just enough plays, especially on special teams, to win that football game. So I found it interesting to hear Aranda say after the fact that, or was it Aranda or was it another player that said, we knew special teams was going to come in, or no, it was Ebner. Ebner said that they knew that they could take advantage of special teams, which is probably not what Iowa State fans wanted to hear. But that was good scouting because that's exactly what they did, and it mattered. And it wasn't just Ebner on the returns. It was a blocked punt.
Isaac Power
was booming punts.
Unbelievable.
Flipping field position. Noah Rauschenberg consistently kicking it out of the back of the end zone on kickoffs to not allow them returns. John Mayer's making his only field goal and making all his extra points. I mean, just play after play after play was made on special teams.
It was Rankins, the kicker.
Rankins. Isaiah Rankins, yeah.
Yeah, Hankins, right?
Hankins, yeah.
But it was just an all-around.
He's one of those guys who just kind of snuck on the roster, but he's done a hell of a job in helping them with their kicking and field goals.
Yeah, but it was a tremendous effort and a tremendous win. That was very dicey, but a win nonetheless.
Terrell Bernard, All-American linebacker, went out in the game with what was a lower leg injury. Anytime you see those, you don't like it. Today, Dave Aranda was asked about him. He actually was asked about it in the postgame and said that there was a concern about torn meniscus. Today, the diagnosis was they really, there's a chance about this week, but possibly back by West Virginia, and it could be long-term. They were waiting for the final diagnosis. Well, he got the final diagnosis from what I'm being told, and that it looks better than it could possibly look, other than the fact he had no knee problem. And that Terrell Bernard, this week against Oklahoma State's a better, a better chance than it was even an hour or two ago that he will play against Oklahoma State. And his first ever start was against Oklahoma State when Johnston went down, right? And he ran a fumble back for a touchdown in that game a couple of years ago. Garmin Randolph, Tristan Ebner is two of the players honored by the Big 12. Ebner was a special teams. Isaac Power could have easily been in that discussion. And Ebner, the special teams, and Garmin Randolph with a big pick. And Apu got his hand on a tip pass that was a big deal.